Have you ever had an unrepresented buyer come directly to your listing, asking for a showing or even to write up an offer? And have you felt unsure how to handle that? It's a tough spot. I get it. Balancing your obligation to the seller while trying to navigate the buyer's needs, trying to be fair to that buyer while being contracted by the seller. And if you handle it the wrong way, you risk losing the deal for everybody, the buyer and the seller, potentially your credibility, which could be even worse for your future. I'm Byron Lazine, CEO at BAM, and I've done over $1 billion in real estate volume. In this video, I'm going to show you how exactly to manage these situations. You'll learn how to stay professional, protect your seller's interests, and provide clear options for the buyer while ensuring you never compromise your value. I'm going to dive in here in this live training to a real world example where one of my team members, Jeremy, handled this exact scenario. You'll hear how he kept the process smooth, transparent, and focused on getting the deal done without ever sacrificing his principles or his time. Plus, I'll break down the scripts and the techniques you can start using today. Enjoy.
When you get a listing, you have people that will also come to you direct. Buyers who are unrepresented, buyers who are not working with an agent. So as the listing agent, this can be a great opportunity. I've got some caution flags I'll talk about after about, hey, I've got a buyer coming to me direct as the listing agent, but Jeremy just had this buyer come to him direct, kind of a weird scenario.
So they reached out to me directly, asked for me to show them the property. I was like, great, sounds good. I sent over the representation forms per usual, and then they had questions about it, and I was like going back and forth with them on the phone. I mean, legally, like, the listing agent doesn't need to get that time to show them the property, so they just didn't want to be represented. I asked them why. Like, a bad experience with an agent in the past, they're like, no, they just didn't want to be represented whatsoever. So I show them the property, and then, like, they liked it. They were like, hey, can you write up this offer for us? I was like, yeah, I could, if, you sign the representation agreement. I'm not going to do more work for the same price. And they're so like, you know what? No. I was like, all right, well, you could reach out to an attorney, have them draft it up. I was telling them their options because I'm not the only option for them. Yeah. So I don't know if they went to an attorney for that or someone walk them through it.
What I love about the way Jeremy handled the situation, number one, is he represents the seller, do what's right for the seller. When there's a buyer who wants to tour the property, you get them into the property to tour it. Whether their agent's in Hawaii not doing his job or they're unrepresented, represented, I don't care. You have contracted your services to the seller to get that property sold. So it's your duty obligation to get as many people into that property to see it, to get as much exposure onto that property as possible so that you can get it sold in the early days on market timeframe. So love that part. What I think is an area to tweak on the scripting and what you're saying to a buyer in that situation. Once they saw the property and they're like, hey, can you write this offer? A lot of times, just naturally as humans, agents, we start to think, okay, what's my role in this? And your response there was, yeah, I can do that if I represent you. I'm not going to do two sides of the work and only do that. The buyer automatically starts to tune that out or start to feel like they're being had in some way if they're uneducated because we've made it about us instead of the process, right? So there's a process here. And there's another way we can have that conversation get to the same place. Hey, Mr. Buyer, totally understand. You're ready to make an offer. Here's the deal. You already had the discussion about representation before, right? Hey, before we toured the property, you weren't ready for representation. At this time, I still fully represent the seller. Okay, so really at this point, you have three options. Option number one, you can stay unrepresented as you are right now. There are options to work as an unrepresented buyer, and Jeremy nailed one of those. One of those options would be to work with an attorney who will simply do fill-in-the-blank contract support for you during this transaction. They're not going to do any of the other stuff, but they'll do fill in the blank support. Option number 2 would be to hire a buyer's agent to fully represent you in this transaction. Your own buyer's agent separate from me. I actually work with a team of agents that could introduce you to one. Or here's the third strategy. A lot of sellers, just like you, that come direct on a listing utilize. They neutralize my position in my contract with the seller by putting me into a dual agent situation. Has anybody walked you through dual agency? No. Let me explain that. Now I explain dual agency and the power of dual agency. The power of dual agency for a buyer who comes direct to a seller is that you've neutralized my position, okay? I can't favor one party or the other. I have to be a conduit of information back and forth between the buyer and the seller. This level of transparency is actually helpful for people to make the right decisions. What'll happen if you're not honest, if you're not the person that gives them all the information, you're not the listing agent that provides that level of transparency, they go and find another house with a listing agent who is not a good person. You get an agent who's desperate as a listing agent, and that same buyer comes along to them and they're like, oh yeah, I can help you fill this out because they've already got a full 5 coming from the seller. And I'll help you fill this out. And they completely put them in a position to fail, or they don't disclose things that are wrong with the property or whatever. And they end up getting a total dog.